Have you ever loved someone so deeply that when they betrayed you, it felt like your entire world lost its language? This video is not just about heartbreak. It's about how one cold winter in Denmark taught me to speak again. Through pain, silence, and snow, I learned to train my ears, rebuild my English, and rediscover my voice. Because sometimes betrayal doesn't destroy you, it becomes your teacher. The winter that broke my English and my heart. It was the kind of winter that seeps into your bones, the kind that makes every breath visible, every silence louder. I had been in Denmark for only 6 months, still struggling to understand the rhythm of conversations, the flat vowels, the soft consonants that Danes tossed around so effortlessly. And then one message changed everything. A simple text, a few words, and I realized the man I thought I'd build a life with had been seeing someone else. That moment, English, the language I had worked so hard to master, vanished from my mind. My heart hurt, but my tongue froze too. I wanted to scream, to explain, to ask why. But the words wouldn't come out. Not in Danish. Not in English. Not even in my mother tongue. My pain had no language. I remember walking down a snowy street in Copenhagen, hearing people laugh in cafes, the sound muffled by windows fogged with warmth. I wanted to step inside, order a coffee, pretend to be fine. But I couldn't even pronounce cappuccino without my voice cracking. My confidence melted faster than the snow on my gloves. They say heartbreak teaches you about love. But for me, it taught me about silence. About how a language can disappear when your heart breaks. My English, once fluent and confident, now sounded foreign to my own ears. Every sentence felt like walking barefoot on ice. Slow, painful, unsure. Still, somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered, "Don't stop." Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was survival. Or maybe I just couldn't bear the thought that both love and language could abandon me at the same time. So I decided to keep talking, even if no one was listening. That winter didn't just break my heart. It stripped me bare. Left me standing in the middle of a foreign city with nothing but my accent and my ache. But what I didn't know then was that this exact pain, this frozen silence, would become the beginning of a new way to learn, a new way to listen, and eventually a new way to live. Because sometimes the moment you lose everything, your love, your words, your pride, is the moment your real voice starts to grow. Silence in a foreign language. There's a special kind of silence when you're hurt in a country that isn't yours. It's not just quiet, it's alien. It's the kind of silence where you hear the world speaking, but none of it belongs to you. I remember sitting on the Copenhagen metro, people chatting softly in Danish around me. Their voices felt like music from another planet. I understood nothing, but my brain kept trying to translate the pain anyway. When you live abroad, every word is a bridge. But when heartbreak hits, that bridge collapses. I tried to talk to my Danish friends about what happened, but my sentences broke halfway. My vocabulary couldn't hold the weight of betrayal. I'd say things like, he was not honest, and they'd nod politely, not knowing that those 3 words were carrying the entire collapse of my world. That night, I'd lie in my small apartment near Nørrebro, listening to the sound of snow brushing against my window. The heater hummed, the clock ticked, and my phone stayed silent. I had never felt so surrounded by sound, and yet so voiceless. Even English felt far away, like a friend who didn't know how to comfort me anymore. You don't realize how powerful words are until you lose them. I couldn't even describe my own emotions. I'd whisper to myself, "I'm sad." And it sounded too small, too polite, too soft for what I felt. There's no word strong enough in any language for the sound of a heart cracking quietly at midnight. But here's the strange thing. That silence started teaching me something. It forced me to listen, really listen. To the rhythm of Danish around me, to the tone of my own breathing, to the hidden melody of loneliness. And slowly I began to notice something. The world doesn't stop speaking just because you do. Silence, it turns out, isn't empty. It's full of information. Accents, pauses, breaths. I started mimicking them quietly under my breath.
A soft talk. A kare fulhej. A hesitant hurdan går det.
It wasn't about being perfect. It was about staying alive. And that's how I survived that winter, not by speaking but by listening. Because when you can't find words, listening becomes your language. Talking to myself in English. One night after another long wordless day, I caught my reflection in the dark window. My eyes looked like someone I didn't recognize, quiet, tired, small. I don't know why, but I whispered in English, "You okay?" And for the first time in weeks, someone answered me. That's how it started. I began talking to myself in English. Not to sound fluent. Not to practice. Just to feel like I still existed. At first it was awkward. My voice cracked. My accent felt too thick, my words too slow. But the silence in that little apartment was worse. So I kept talking. I'd narrate my day like a low-budget audiobook no one asked for. "Okay, we're making tea now. Don't cry over the tea bag, please. Wow, you really wore pajamas for the third day in a row, huh?" It was funny and sad and kind of healing. Every word was like a tiny step back toward myself. When you speak to yourself, you become both teacher and student. I started catching my own mistakes. "I goes to the shop." No, I go." I'd repeat the sentence until it sounded right. Felt silly, but it worked. My pronunciation improved without me even noticing. And weirdly, so did my confidence. There's a psychological reason for that. Studies show that self-talk, even out loud, helps the brain regulate emotions and process trauma. When you say your thoughts out loud, they stop echoing in your head. They become real, tangible, manageable. It's like telling your brain, "I've got this. We're okay." And in a way, speaking English to myself gave me distance from the pain. The words "he cheated on me" sounded less devastating when spoken in another language. It was like wrapping my heartbreak in grammar, fragile but structured. Soon I started reading aloud anything I could find. Street signs, café menus, random articles online. I wasn't studying English anymore. I was using it to stay sane. Some nights I'd even laugh mid-sentence, realizing how absurd it looked. A girl in her pajamas talking to the kettle in English while snow piled up outside. But that's how healing often looks. Ridiculous but real. That winter I learned something powerful. Sometimes the only person who can save you is the voice you almost forgot you had. The snow became my teacher. There's something strangely kind about snow. It falls on everyone the same. Rich, poor, broken-hearted, fluent or lost in translation. It doesn't ask questions. It just lands softly and waits for you to notice. That winter, the snow became my quiet companion. When no one else was around, I'd walk outside just to listen to the sound of my boots crunching against it. A slow, steady rhythm that somehow felt like conversation. I started whispering English words into the cold air, just to see if they'd freeze or float. Simple words first: hope, trust, gone, learn. My breath turned them into little clouds, white and visible, like proof that even pain could be spoken and no one judged me out there. Not the wind, not the snow, not the seagulls screaming above the canal. I could mispronounce everything and the world didn't laugh. That was my first lesson. The only one who cared about my mistakes was me, so I began a ritual. Every morning before the city woke, I'd walk to a nearby lake and practice speaking slowly. I'd repeat sentences from podcasts I'd been listening to, matching the rhythm of my steps. I am okay. Crunch. I am learning. Crunch. I will be fine. Crunch.it sounds poetic now, but at the time it was survival. The cold made me focus, my tongue, my breath, the shape of each sound. English became physical. It wasn't in my head anymore. It was in the air, in my lungs, in the fog that left my mouth. I remember one morning, a Danish woman passed by and smiled. She probably thought I was a tourist talking on the phone. But her small smile felt like approval, like the world giving me a quiet nod to keep going. And here's what's fascinating. The brain actually remembers better when emotion is involved. Neuroscientists call it emotional encoding. That's why songs linked to heartbreak or joy are impossible to forget. My English words, born out of pain and snow, stuck with me permanently. They weren't just vocabulary, they were memories. The snow didn't teach me grammar or pronunciation, taught me patience. It taught me that learning, like healing, takes repetition, silence, and a bit of faith that one day it'll make sense. So if you ever feel too broken to keep learning, remember, snow doesn't rush, but it still changes everything it touches. The science of slow listening. Here's something no one tells you. Your brain is not lazy, it's just overwhelmed. When you try to listen to fast English while your emotions are still raw, your brain doesn't process, it protects. It's like trying to learn to swim while holding a storm inside your chest. That's why I stopped forcing myself to keep up. I started listening slowly. Every morning in that little Danish apartment, I'd play a podcast at half speed. At first it sounded ridiculous, like everyone was drunk or underwater. But then something shifted. My ears started to notice. The pauses. The tone. The way native speakers breathe between thoughts. I realized English isn't just words. It's rhythm, music, emotion. There's actual science behind it. When we listen slowly, we give our auditory cortex time to identify patterns. That's how the brain turns noise into meaning. Researchers call this the chunking effect. Your brain groups sounds into understandable units. And when you slow down, those chunks become clearer, easier to imitate. So I began shadowing, repeating what I heard right after the speaker. I didn't worry about being perfect. I just tried to feel the sound. How's your day going? Became a melody I could hum. Take it easy became a rhythm I could walk to. The more I listened slowly, the faster I learned naturally. Something else changed too. My anxiety started fading. Slow listening is like meditation. It forces your attention into the present, one syllable, one breath at a time. You can't panic about tomorrow when you're busy decoding the shape of today. And then I noticed something profound. The same patience I was using to understand English was helping me understand myself. When you listen slowly, truly listen, you start hearing things that fast pain drowns out. Your own thoughts, your own heartbeat, your quiet strength. The Danish winter became my laboratory. My headphones, my microscope. Every sound I mastered felt like reclaiming a piece of confidence. Every time I caught an idiom correctly, it was like warmth returning to my frozen self-esteem. Fast doesn't mean fluent. Fluent means flowing. And flowing begins when you stop fighting your brain and start cooperating with it, gently, patiently, one slow sentence at a time. So if you ever feel like you're not improving, maybe it's not your skill, maybe it's your speed. Slow down, and your brain will finally have time to listen to you too. Rebuilding confidence word by word. Confidence doesn't return all at once. It comes back in fragments like broken glass, like syllables. For months, I couldn't say a single sentence in English without feeling that familiar sting of self-doubt. But one morning I caught myself ordering coffee. Clearly, calmly, in perfect English, and the barista understood me immediately. That tiny moment felt like fireworks. Not because of the coffee, but because I'd finally heard my voice sound like me again. Rebuilding confidence after heartbreak and after losing your fluency is a strange mix of psychology and repetition. The science says that every time you succeed, even in a small way, your brain releases dopamine, the "you're doing great" chemical. It's addictive. So I started chasing that feeling, one correct word at a time. At home, I made a rule. No silent thinking. Everything had to be spoken out loud. My plans, my frustrations, even my grocery list. I'm going to the store. I will buy milk. Simple, maybe even silly. But those sentences became anchors in the storm. They reminded me I still had control over something. My words. I also wrote short sticky notes and placed them around my apartment. You are learning. Speak without fear. Accent is not a flaw. It's history and sound. Every morning I'd read them aloud. It felt childish at first, but then I noticed something. The more I repeated them, the truer they sounded. The words began shaping the belief. Confidence, I realized, isn't about knowing everything. It's about trusting that you can learn anything. It's not about perfect pronunciation, it's about the courage to open your mouth even when you might be wrong. Slowly I started speaking with others again, classmates, baristas, strangers on the bus. Each interaction felt like a test, but also like a victory. Even the awkward silences became proof that I was trying. Because confidence doesn't grow from success. It grows from survival. From every moment you choose not to give up. To be why the end of that winter, my English was no longer something I practiced. It was something I lived. Every word I spoke was a brick rebuilding the person I thought I'd lost. And for the first time, my voice didn't shake when I said, "I'm okay." because I wasn't pretending anymore. I was rebuilding one word, one breath, one brave sentence at a time. When English became my healing language. It's funny, the very language that once made me feel small eventually became the one that helped me stand tall again. Somewhere between the heartbreak and the snow, English stopped being just grammar and vocabulary. It became therapy. My healing language. At first, I didn't notice it happening. I was journaling in English, short sentences, nothing fancy. I miss him. I want to be free. I will be okay. Each line looked like a language exercise, but it was really a confession. Writing in English gave me distance. It made the pain less sharp, like translating heartbreak into something my heart could safely read. Then I started reading poetry aloud, Maya Angelou, Mary Oliver, Rupi Kaur. Their words became a bridge between what I felt and what I could finally express. I'd whisper, "Still I rise," and something inside me truly did. I realized I wasn't just practicing pronunciation. I was practicing forgiveness. Science backs this up too. When we express emotions in a second language, the brain's amygdala, the fear center, becomes less reactive. It's as if emotional pain gets filtered through logic. That's why talking about trauma in another language often feels easier. It doesn't hurt as much. English gave me emotional breathing room, space to process without drowning. So I made English part of my healing ritual. Every night I'd talk to myself softly before bed. A bedtime story for the soul. You did your best. You're still learning. You're not broken, just rewiring. Little by little, I began to believe those words. Not because they were in English, but because they came from the part of me that refused to quit. And one evening while walking home from class, I realized I was humming in English. The melody wasn't planned. It just came out light and effortless. That was the moment I knew I had made peace with the language and maybe with myself. English didn't just help me communicate again. It helped me remember who I was before the heartbreak and who I could still become after it. Sometimes healing doesn't happen in your native tongue. Sometimes it happens in the language you learned while trying to survive. Love, Betrayal, and a Better Accent. By spring, the snow in Copenhagen had melted, and so had the heaviness in my chest. The city looked different. Maybe it was the light, or maybe it was me. I walked past the same cafes, the same streets, even the same bench where I once cried in silence. But this time I wasn't the same person. My accent was softer now, smoother, like it had been polished by pain and patience. And somehow it sounded more mine. One day, completely by accident, I met him again, the man who had broken my heart. He smiled awkwardly, said something about how good my English sounded now. I almost laughed, because he was right. My English had changed. But so had I. See, betrayal teaches you strange lessons. It teaches you what to let go of, what to hold on to, and who you become when everything else falls apart. And when you rebuild word by word, sound by sound, even your voice carries the proof. My new accent wasn't perfect. It was better. It was honest. That I used to think love was something that made you softer. Now I know real love, even after betrayal, makes you clearer. It sharpens you like the crisp Danish air after a snowstorm. It reminds you that being understood isn't about flawless grammar. It's about speaking from a place of truth. And maybe that's what language is all about. Not perfection, but connection. Every mistake I made, every mispronounced word, every tear that froze on my cheek that winter, they all shape the way I speak today. When I say, I'm okay, it's not just English. It's survival. It's forgiveness. It's growth. So yes, he cheated. And yes, it hurt. But that winter didn't destroy me. It rebuilt me in a new language with a stronger heart. Sometimes the worst kind of pain becomes the best kind of teacher. And now when I teach others to listen, read, and speak English, I always tell them this: don't chase perfection. Chase meaning that don't fear mistakes. Fear silence. Because even in betrayal there's a lesson, if you're brave enough to listen.